But next to one of our favourite subjects with one of our favourite regulars. Mark Hoven from Advisor Ratings is coming up next. And he was given some homework, if you were watching last week, and that was to read New South Wales Senator Andrew Bragg's new book, Bad Egg, How to Fix Super. He spent the weekend doing that and he's back today. Safe to say the Liberal Senator's not a big fan of the super industry, and here to try his hand at being a book critic, Mark. Hello, mate. How was your reading? You still awake?
Good afternoon. Yes, and you could argue I had a long weekend, so I should have got right to the heart of the issues, no doubt.
Now, Mark, Senator Bragg says the $32 billion in fees that the super industry collects annually are a wrought and the system's broken. Look, does he have a point?
Well, it is a beast of a system. You know, $3 trillion. It's massive, and it, for that reason alone, deserves some more attention. It's a complex industry. It's insular, and it's not well understood by the people who is most important, and the customers or the members. So I think for those reasons alone, it always deserves more attention. But having said that, let's acknowledge that the Australian Superannuation industry and mandatory scheme is recognised as one of the best in the world, for a broad range of reasons, in terms of the benefits it delivers to retirees, the attachment of life insurance to the system as well, and there's an independent inquiry that's going to be handing down findings next month into the future of the retirement system. So I think it's worthwhile waiting to see what happens there, but no doubt there will be findings that recommend further changes to the system. And probably the most important thing is that the system needs an objective, and the industry well recognises that. It's not legislated in terms of having an objective, and that's probably the most important thing that we will be looking for, I guess, in the review.
Mark, Senator Bragg's just as critical of industry super funds as retail funds. He doesn't hold back and sort of points to the Royal Commission and the issues that were identified in there. And he really sort of rips into the whole process. And I kind of got the impression reading it that he almost sort of thinks we should just stop doing it. You're better off buying property and do your own self-managed thing somewhere along the way. Is he just sort of a politician howling into the wind, or does he have a point?
Well, I think he's shaking the tree and challenging us to think a little more fundamentally about the design of the system. But again, I would caution that it's not broken. It can be improved. There's no doubt costs can be taken out of the system, in a variety of ways. Better investment management, more money, default money going into low-cost options, more user pays in terms of members paying for additional services that otherwise are being spread across the entire membership base. Obviously looking at the whole default system tied to employment. There are a range of ways that costs can be improved and performance can be improved, because at the end of the day, it should be about a net return outcome. That's what we should all care about when it comes to money in the hand. But you touch on some more controversial issues around taking money out of super early to pay for things like property, and that's an interesting proposition.
Absolutely. I still remember my accountant many years ago saying, don't salary sacrifice, buy a house. So, even my accountant, my financial advisor was telling me that. So is he right on that front?
Well, that's a more complex question. I'll quickly jump back to what we talked about last week, Simon, and that was that the evidence from various surveys that are emerging are showing that people who are taking out their early super under the current regime, $10,000 this quarter, $10,000 next quarter, are not spending it very wisely. They're spending it on discretionary items, and that's a concern. And I think it reflects normal human behaviour. Putting it into something like property sounds noble, but I just wonder if those additional dollars are not going to be eaten up by simply prices rising from increased demand, from people accessing their super early. And then more concerningly, of course, they're unlikely to put that money back into super when they're able to. meaning they get to the end of their working life and they do not have the balance to generate an income, a comfortable income retirement.
Mark, it's 10% of people's earnings, though. I think what we've seen lately, it has been attractive for people to be able to withdraw $10,000 out now and perhaps $10,000 next quarter if they need it. Retirement seems a long time away. If you couldn't pull money out perhaps to buy your first home, are there other ways that you think people might be able to access those savings and make them work for them in a better way than perhaps they are now, considering the amount lost to fees and taxes anyway?
Yeah, it's a complex question. Look, I think the industry has acknowledged that it needs to change its ways and that there is significant consumer demand for accessing what is considered their money. So I don't think it's ruled out the ideas of potentially deploying some of the money into first home owner schemes, provided that the controls and the rules around that are properly designed. I think the early access to super is clearly intended to help people in real financial distress. So the intention is right. Again, arguably, it hasn't been well designed in the controls that are built around withdrawing the super in the first place. So they could be tightened, and that scheme becomes, much more effective, directed to the right people, not spread across a broader community that probably doesn't need that funding. So I don't have a crystal ball about where the ideas may flow in terms of helping people, but certainly I think it needs to address some of the areas that it's truly identified as having gaps, and that's the gig worker economy, clearly a very fast-growing space, people on low incomes, women, or anyone for that matter who's taken out of the workforce for a variety of reasons, and they're not receiving their normal contributions from their employer. So I think there's some of the ways and areas I think that really need to be attended to.
Mark, it's a big subject with a lot of ideas in it and an ongoing conversation, but thanks for your contribution to it today. It's always great to talk with you, and thanks for your time.
You're welcome.
That's Mark Hoven from Advisor Ratings joining us to discuss superannuation.